Hey guys, welcome back to Clooney Garage. Cool episode today. We're going to do springs and shocks that we picked up on Facebook Marketplace for 200 bucks. So we're going to show you how to lower your car on a budget. Before we get into the shocks and the springs, and Frankie's about to turn her up and, bring the little devices with him, let's give you an update on all the things we've been doing in the snot box because we've had two major developments. First one here, as you can see, we've got batteries and chargers lying around. And that's because on these cold winter mornings, these batteries don't last real well. And we think this could be the second or third battery this car's ever had. Couldn't find a date on it, but come and we'll show you where the batteries are on these VEs. And I'll let Fred Jr. get in there. We've got a 600 cranking amp battery in there. We just picked him up. That's the go. The other mod we've been doing is over here. You probably heard all the snack, crackle and pop. We have had to go back to our X-Force end mufflers. But if you have a look under there, Fred Jr., we've polished all the mufflers up. Show all the viewers underneath. Looking a little bit more speckier than they did last time. So that's all right. It's not as loud, but it's nowhere near as obnoxious as it was. And we don't, taking for a drive, we don't think it's robbed it of any power. It just means that we're not going to drive around and get defected, which is not a good thing. So we'll show you the ride height before we get started. And these VE utes, they're commercial trade vehicles. So they've got pretty heavy duty suspension in them, but that means they also sit really high here too. So we'll do a bit of a test here. And our friends at Mighty Car Mods have shared this one with us too. So if you can get your shoe in there, which we can, it's too high. So I'll do some before and after measurements here. So we're going to measure from the center of the hub up to the top of the guard, and that'll give us some sort of an idea of when we do lower the car with lowered springs and shocks, how much we've gained. So we'll start roughly at the center of the hub there, and we're at 400. So let's hopefully get that down a bit. And the reason we're practicing on the snot box and getting lowered springs and shocks in that is because we want to get a bit of practice up, because I've just ordered some MCA coilovers to go onto Clooney. Because you look at our standard suspension as well, that's still far too high. And these, these stock springs and shocks, not designed for the track at all. They're not adjustable. The MCA coilovers are. So we've ordered them. So have a look at the back as well. So we've got heaps of distance here to make up for. So I'm going to post another video when we actually get the MCA coilovers delivered. We're going to do a whole episode on how to set them up, and also all the specs that I've ordered with my race reds as well. Okay, so we've had a few setbacks here when we tried to put the springs and shocks in. Let's talk about it because it was a little bit embarrassing, but a bit of a learning episode for us here on Clooney Garage. So we bought what we thought would fit our VE Commodore. We bought VF shocks and lowered springs, and we went to put them in, and we found two issues. This gauge is actually heaps narrow on a VE, and the bolt holes also do not line up. The springs are okay, they're lowered springs. So we're going to use our new lowered springs on our old shocks and then save up and get some coilovers for the VE. So we're going to do that in a day or so when Frankie comes around. But so we don't waste time, check out what else I've been doing. Oh, Fred, you haven't stopped. And check out the noodle that someone has put in here. So we're thinking that this car has been in an accident. And look at the plastic sort of here. It's all sort of split and that. And we think the bar was sagging, and old mate's used a happy noodle there to sort of prop it up a bit. But we've got the bar off. And the reason we've taken the bar off is we're going to have a go at doing our own brake ducting. And we're going to need that for the track and cool these rotors down. And we've always wanted to do brake ducting, and we're going to have to do it for Clooney anyways. Why not learn on the snot box? So if you look at the back of the bar here, I'm going to work out how to pull these fog lights out. I'm going to get a different mesh surround here for the front air dam, and then pull that rest of that wiring out. And I'll tell you how easy it is to pull the front bar off. It's actually super easy. So what you've got to do is turn your wheels in the opposite direction on each side, get to these little grommet clips that fit here, undo them. On the inside of there, when you peel that back, you'll find two bolts going up into the top of the bar. Underneath the bar, you'll find some screws. Supposed to be about 5 of them. We only had one hanging ours in, and then you've just got to sort of jiggle it a bit and get it out. Later model VEs have got this huge weather plate that goes under them with about 5 bolts. Ours didn't. Ours is 2010. So this may not be the ducting we end up using. This is from Bunnings, if you can believe it. And those ducting brackets and flanges are not going to be for long-term use. Don't worry, viewers. We're going to go to Revolution Race Gear and get some proper silicone hose, brake ducting and some flanges. And I'm going to MIG up a couple of brackets as well that go onto the back of the rotor. But for all intensive purposes, we're going to mock it up. So we're going to cut the fog light out. We're going to replace our air dam and get to it. Okay, show you what the back of a VE bar looks like. And these are the back of the fog lights. So that looks like we've got an Allen key just here with little clips on them. Look like I just push the back, that little clip in. And there's clips here and here, and I reckon that'll push forward. That looks easy. That looks like it's the light that goes onto the... So I'm going to unclip all that, because we don't need fog lights anymore. Same on that fog light. And this front air dam, this looks super easy. This looks like that pops out. And that's good, because this one was plastic dipped, and you just wouldn't bloody know. Anyway, I can't say much about that. I'm going to have trouble. Anyway, but I bought, check this out, universal mesh. And it's even got a VE on the front of it. Don't want to have a ricer look. I want a authentic V8 supercar look. So that is going to replace that, and that should look the business. So step number one is really easy. That just really clips out of here. You've just got to pull on these little plastic tabs, work your way around and get him off. Now that's the front side of it. It has been plastic dipped previously, but the trick what I'm going to do with this one here is that the frame is actually really good. So what I'm going to do is flipping around. I am going to cut out the honeycomb all the way around and keep the integrity of the frame, because the frame is what's going to clip back into the bar. I'm then going to create a template with cardboard and go all the way around. Once I've cut the honeycomb out, I'm then going to get a cardboard template and put that onto the mesh and then cut around the mesh. Sounds like a bit of a two-step process, but it's going to get a better result and a better fit. And whilst I'm doing that, I'm also going to pull these little guys out with the Allen key clips and stuff that I showed you before. So those are not little Allen keys, they're actually Torx screws. So they're out, and then our little fog light pops out. He probably hasn't seen daylight for quite a few years, that little fella. But that reveals our shroud, and by the look of things, I reckon that might be close to the size of our ducting, if not a bit small, but we'll have a look. Pull the other side off too. He's off as well. And then we'll just take a bit of a look, because those brackets are pretty cool. I've got some other ones here, but I might need to do some thinking after looking at those holes, because they could be fit for purpose. So I've just poked that little fog light shroud through, and whilst the diameter of the actual fog light is 3 inches, it's got this funny looking flange in there. I don't think you'd be able to get a duct onto it. I don't know how you'd secure it, so I don't think that would be the go. But the length of the shroud might give us something to work with if we cut all that out, but that sort of opening there is not going to work. I mean, it's purpose built for a fog light, so anyway, it's worth a try. Let's keep having a look, keep nutting some problems out. Alright, so put a coat of paint on our fog light surrounds and our front air dam, and I've cut all that honeycomb inlet out of that one. So that's going to get ready for some aluminium mesh. And then, check this out. Our front bar has been fully sanded, and we've got some matte black on it. That's the first coat. I'm just going to let that dry. I'll put the air compressor on it in a bit. But it was a huge job getting that prepared. And not for the faint-hearted. Like, don't try and do that in an hour. So you got to spend a bit more time on it than that. But, you know, we're going to keep going. It's a public holiday tomorrow. So we are going to keep working on this thing. I'll get another coat of paint on that. And then Frankie's coming over, because we're going to put some lowered springs into the front of and the back of the Commodore, and get this thing lowered, The shocks aren't right, but that's okay. Stick with us tomorrow. It's going to be great. All right, so Frankie's turned up, and once again, he hasn't disappointed. He's got that pyjama outfit on again. Frankie, what are we doing today?
I think we'll throw those lowered springs and shocks in, and the original shocks are well past their best.
Yeah.
And we'll just see how it sits with the lowering shocks in it, and go from there.
Sounds good. And as I mentioned earlier, we've got VF shocks that don't fit a VE, and anyway, it's another story. Facebook Marketplace, the gift that always gives. But we are going to put the lowered springs in, reuse the old shocks. We're going to show you how to do it, and we're going to start on the passenger front. Alright, so once the front wheel's off, first step is to hit that front sway bar link. It's got a 17mm on it, Frankie.
17, yep.
17. And you've just got to use a little Torx attachment there, because otherwise that front sway bar bolt will just keep spinning. So we'll get him off, show you the next step. Alright, what do you get out there, Frankie?
This is the brake line. It's got a little slot which you've got to turn about 90 degrees to get it to go into this little gap here.
Yeah.
Bit of a bugger.
Was that the ABS sensor you pulled out as well?
Yeah, this goes to the tone wheel on the ABS, I think.
Righto. Alright, next step, let's keep going. Alright, so there's two bolts that go onto the shock tower there. What are you using there, Frankie? 22 and a...
17, I think. 19.
19 and a 22.
To get this bugger off. There's two of them.
There's two of those, and as we mentioned, they are different sizes for when you look at a VF's shocks. Alright, our two shock tower bolts are out, and we're using a bucket full of chains here just to hold that rotor in place and separate it. And Frankie, I might need to get on the top there and loosen that top shock mount.
Sounds good.
Alright, and I'm just going to hit that with a rattle gun, loosen it off, and then we'll just sort of drop it through. Alright, so we're just going to use our little rattle gun here and just going to loosen just the first couple of threads off there, and we'll then do it by hand, Frankie. A little bit more. Alright, might loosen in by hand, but Frankie. Okay, so that shock tower is up. Frankie is pulling out a shock with a beautiful looking shock boot on it there. Yeah. Frankie, look at that. That's just
separated a bit.
She's separated fully. And our other one had some ball bearings coming out the top there, so we're going to make sure this one is okay. Anyway, let's get our spring compressors on it, pull it apart, see how it's looking, and then we'll put our lowered spring on. Alright, got our spring compressors. We're just going to mate them up, and we'll do one on each side, Frankie.
Yeah, take a bit of weight off the
spring. Cool. Yep. Let's compress away. So we've got our old spring off, and here's our new lowered spring, well, second-hand lowered spring. And we're going to fit this lowered spring to the old shock, and like everyone's probably going to say, oh, you've got to match your shocks and springs, and we know that. We just want to see how it sits. We're going to lower it a little bit, and also just get some practice doing all this, because our MCAs are coming, and we don't want this to be the first time that we're learning how to do this. So, isn't that right, Frankie?
You bet it is.
Woohoo! All right, look how the state of that boot, that is stuffed, and I think the shocks are equally as stuffed a number of Ks I've done. And these are funny. These little top hats have got this set of ball bearings, and they notoriously fall out, but we're going to repack them, get our lowered spring onto the old shock, and keep going. Okay, so we've reassembled our shock with our lowered spring, making sure all the washers and our little bag of marbles on the top of that tower didn't fall out. And now we should be getting ready to put him back in.
Oh my.
Frankie's lining up the shock, and Fred is getting ready. Here it is. Coming up, Frankie. And make sure your notches are facing to the top. Oh, keep on, Frankie. Yep, I'm biting. Yep. She's in. Now tighten that with the rattle gun.
What's going on?
So just before we tighten up the top of the shock, we're going to line up our bolts here. The front sway bar is in, Frankie.
Sway bar's here.
Sway bar's in.
Put our brake line on.
Yep.
put this upright back in this little slot here.
Yep.
And good to go.
Your bucket with your chains there's going well.
Beautiful.
Okay, so our front shock and spring are in, and I'm just working out exactly how we're going to do these brake ducts here, because I've got the on the front air dam, we'll show you in a second, a ducting inlet, and we're just working out, do we come in at about here, maybe cut a hole in that shroud and come around and get onto the back of the rotor here, because you just don't want it here because obviously it's going to foul on the tyre. So I'm just going to do some investigating on that, but I'm thinking around about there. I might hang something off there, and then we'll have to look at some sort of ducting outlet here to put the ducting actually onto the, and then cut through some of that heat shield as well. But that's all right, get onto that, and I'm going to order some brake ducting as well from Revolution Race Gear. And whilst we're here, here's how the front spoiler is looking. So that's been cleaned, sanded, painted, matte black. I'm going to put some clear on that. And it's upside down at the moment. I'll flop it around the other side so you can see. But they're our fog lamps inlet. And we will use, still a touch tacky, but we've deleted the, obviously the fog lamp. And we're going to use that for our inlet for our brake ducts. All right, we'll just tighten up our, oh, and here's Mackenzie, the star of the show, Mackie K. So just tighten up our shock towers, put our wheels back on. Mackenzie! Good girl. Good girl. And then we'll lower it on the ground, and let's, obviously just got to let the car settle a bit too, and then we'll check the ride height. And from memory, it was 400 from the hub to the wheel arch on this side. It's 420 on the back, so we'll do a measurement. All right, it's going to start on the rears, but we've done the front, and it's sitting, and we've got about a 40mm drop. So it was sitting at 400 before from the centre of the hub to the guard. That's going to heat better. So let's get the rear end of the car up, and we'll do everything on the rear shocks and springs. Okay, so we've done our first of our rears, and we now know what we're doing. So Frankie's under, getting the passenger side, getting it ready. So Frankie, show everyone the fastening points and what we're going to undo first and why.
It's a bit tricky. You got to undo this with an 18mm nut, and it's an 18mm bolt holding the bottom of the shock on.
Yep.
We've got to undo this 18mm as well, which is the bottom of the control arm.
And that's interesting getting it back in, isn't it, Frankie?
Getting back in is fun. Yeah. Then we've got to undo this sway bar mount, which is 15mm.
Yep.
And needs your little Allen or torque
split
to go onto that to hold the bolt.
And
then
top of the tower.
There's 4 of these, and they're real pain. 2 of them are right at the back here.
Yeah.
But they're really long bolt, but they come out nice and easy.
They must have like a captive on the top of them.
Yeah, captive nut in the frame of the car.
Yep. All right, we'll start undoing, and then we'll show you when the components are out. And then the fun bit is we're going to show everyone at home.
Putting that bugger back in.
Exactly.
What's fun.
All right, stick with us. All right, all our bolts are removed. Done our 4 top on the tower. Get our there's one spring and fairly used shock, Frankie.
Nice.
Ugh. All right, so our rear shock and spring is out. We're going to take the top of the tower off. We don't have any boots on these, do we, Frankie?
Well, it's got a big metal, oh, it's not a metal, plastic solid cover that covers the shock.
Yeah.
Nothing but the best, of course.
Yeah. No, that's all right.
So use our little compressors, squeeze them up.
Yep.
And undo this.
Get a little top hat off.
15mm.
And we're going to obviously put our top hat onto our new lowered springs, and I've got old mate's second-hand shocks there. We'll get our little spring compressors on. Safety first at Clooney Garage. We'll get our eye protection on, and we'll compress away. Alright, so we've reassembled our lowered spring. The new shock top hat is on, and we're about to get it back in the car. Alright, so the order you put your rear spring and shock back in is pretty important. So Frankie, tell us what you're going to do first.
We're just going to put these 4 top 15mm bolts in finger tight.
Yep.
Then we'll put our bolt through the bottom of the shock.
Which goes in there.
And then work on this problem child here.
Yeah.
And get that guy on. And then we can put the sway bar link back in.
All right, let's get our little top hat mounted up. All right, Frankie and I'll tell you what, you know you've been doing well when one light goes out of batteries. So we've got those last 2 bolts in. Our top hat is in. And we actually didn't need to undo our rear sway bar. So, but that one there, we did that one first and then we did that one. And it's a 2-person job to wiggle that rotor and get it in the right spot and drop it in, and holy dolly. Not for the faint-hearted, but we know how to do it now. So, what we're going to do, Frankie's going to get the wheels on. It's also dark outside, but we are going to quickly drop the car, measure it from the centre of the wheel hubs to the wheel arch, see what sort of drop we've got, settle the springs, go for a quick drive, and then remeasure them. Stick with us. Okay, so I'm going to make my mesh template here. So I've got the front air dam surround, and I'm going to put that onto a bit of cardboard. I'm going to trace it round, then cut out my cardboard template, and use that as the basis to go onto our mesh. There's our template. Let's start cutting it out. So there's our template. And you've noticed I've gone a little bit outside the lines there, because when we put that onto the mesh, that way we can always trim up the excess mesh, and if you go too small, then you end up wasting a lot of mesh. So I'd rather go bigger than go home. So I've just placed our template onto the mesh, and this sort of mesh here, got it from Super Cheap, and it's pretty thin gauge aluminium, and you can just cut it with a pair of scissors. So I'm going to go nice and slow, go up this side first, do the big long piece, and then start trimming around and show you when it's done. Okay, so that gives us our mesh cut to our template, and let's fit it in the shroud and then trim up the loose edges. Okay, so we've got our mesh sitting in our shroud, and I'm just going to zip tie it up and make it all tight. Okay, so we've got our mesh sitting in our shroud, and I'm just going to zip tie it up and make it all tight. All right, our mesh is sitting inside our shroud now. It's all tightened up, and now I'll turn my attention to get the rest of this front bar sorted, and I'll chuck it in. Okay, so our fog light surrounds just clip back in from the other side. The front air dam mesh clips in on this side, on the underside, and that's that one. Let's flip it over, show you how it looks. Alright, so here's how we ended up. I've got a bit of a light on there to show you. I finished putting all my clear coat on. There's the front air dam. Got a new, well, fog light delete inlets in, just enough for a brake duct, and I'm going to go source some brake ducting and fit them onto the back of those 3-inch outlets. I tell you what, I'm getting a bit tired here. Been working all day, twirling spanners and sorting out this thing, and we are pretty happy with how it's sitting. We've just got a few things to tighten up, let everything bed down, and then Frankie and I will take it for a test drive.